to lead, that the way ahead was not going to be a bed of roses. And if there were any doubting Thomases, they can now see where we are, and they can confirm that this is not a picnic. As I listen to us over the past couple of weeks, I have advised myself that there is need for us to draw some very clear demarcations between a revolution and a change of guard. I see that we tend sometimes to focus, as we talk about the next pressure points, about the removal of the custodians of a system. And as a student of political science and history, I advise myself that there is a wide path between a change of guard and a revolution. A change of guard without attempting to be patronizing, really, is when we remove the custodian who is there for the time being and bring in different custodians without addressing the fundamentals of the pillars that hold the system in place. I see that as Kenyan people, we have had very many false dawns. And Dr. Miguna has taken us through a chronology of turning points when our history has failed to turn. My interpretation as a student of politics, history, and international relations is that during all those vantage points that Dr. Miguna talks about, we have attempted to remove the custodians of the system, the gatekeepers, without varying the system itself. And therefore, as we go forward, I do agree that William Samoei Ruto is the custodian, is the person that we are addressing just now. But we must go beyond the person called William Samoei Ruto. We must clearly define what we want. And I think that the Gen Zs have been spot on. They have mentioned the changes that they want to see, so that they start leading us towards the kind of country that we want. Yet I see that even those, as they are put together and pushed through, if they will be, will not necessarily amount into a revolution. They could be piecemeal changes within the same existing system. I see that members of the political class are regrouping, and that starting tomorrow we will have the custodians of the system coming together in a rehashed and choreographed kind of dialogical arrangement, at the end of which things which they have already pre-concluded will be cast before the nation as the outcomes of that so-called dialogue. And basically, it is protection of the status quo, which we must be conscious of, and which we need to stand up against. Now, as we say that, therefore, we have got to ask ourselves what our methods are going to be. I think the first speaker, I'm not so sure who she was, I found her going on, spoke about the need for non-violence. And I do think that the non-violent approach was the defining methodological departure from the earlier efforts, and it's been able to move us very significantly. When we say that such and such a date is going to be the 0 hour, it's going to be the moment that the guillotine will come down, I would urge us to speak a lot more about the methods that will make that happen rather than the characterization of the villains. We already know about the villains, and that is why we are engaging against them. And if more of our energy would go towards saying, so this is what we must do, and attempt to break it down. I'm afraid I will not pretend that I have got any fast and ironcast answers on what needs to be done. But I also know that when you have a formula that is working, you tend to continue to apply that formula. As you may think about other formulas, we have been occupying spaces, and we want to talk a lot more about occupying more spaces in a non-violent manner, barring which we would be talking about engaging as militias. And I doubt that that is the path that we want to engage with, certainly not for the time being, in my view. And so, what do we do to mobilize more people to come out if we are talking about revolution, and also defining very clearly that as we talk about a revolution, because for me, as a student of revolutions in world history, and there I can claim the right to speak ex cathedra because it's one of my areas of study and specialization. I understand revolutions in world history, and I would know that if you just substitute one individual with another, like we do in football, then you have not carried through a revolution. We must talk about a systemic change, and we must define the system that we want, and we must define the kind of leadership that we want, and we must define the kind of country that we want. And then we must also define probable and possible timelines. Then we can talk as a country, as Kenyans, as patriots, that we are pushing towards a revolution and that we are edging in to the expected outcomes. And so, therefore, finally, because I intend to keep my remarks fairly brief, we do well to recognize just two things that I want to conclude with. Number one, and I think it was Dr. Miguna who spoke about that, Gen Z must become a spirit rather than a physical, temporal definition and limitation of persons and groups in terms of age. Yes, the age factor has been important because this is a demographic that has galvanized the nation into action, but it must spread beyond that to become a spirit and to become a movement of like minded persons, regardless of what other descriptors and defining and limiting factors there could be about their identity. Let it be a spirit, let it be a movement that brings all and everybody who is like minded on board. And B, within final, is that I appreciate this notion of leaderless. Yes, I agree very much with the notion of tribeless, partyless, but I doubt that I could subscribe for too long on the notion of leaderless. I have studied revolutions in world history. I know, for example, that one of the reasons the 1848 revolutions in Europe failed was absence of clear leadership and absence of organization from France to Italy to Prussia and to other places where the revolutionaries attempted to put their act together. And in Africa, we have had failed quasi-revolutions because they have lacked a proper organization and leadership, and in the end, they have been hijacked by marauding vultures who have then gone on to perpetuate the systems that the people were trying to overthrow. So allow me to just limit my remarks for now to that so that we can also listen to wisdom from others. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Neto, do you want to chime in before Tabitha comes in? And I see Buka is raising his hand.
Yes, I have a few reactions.
Over to you. Go on, Buka.
Thank you. I've just been summing up some of the contribution of my fellow panelists, but just to contextualize them, I think there are three important things that if we do not do, then the chances of success are very limited. One, and it's that we must understand the enemy clearly. In fact, if we understand the enemy clearly, then we can define tactics and strategy to defeat the enemy. So this is important. And then what do we want to achieve? In our correct analysis, the enemy is a group of individuals, and they are a minority that consistently get support from certain foreign interests to impose policies upon the Kenyan people that are alien to the majority of those people, that are alien to the majority of the Kenyan people. That means President William Samoei Ruto is a representation of a class, a parasitic class that are rich, corrupt, but they do not produce anything. Now, once we classify the people in this country that act as conveyor belt for the international, imperialism, particularly now that people are even conscious about IMF and World Bank, IMF will not find a root in Kenya without such individuals. These people exist both in government and opposition. These are the criminals that we must defeat to access power. And to defeat them to access power, whether the current Kenya Kwanza administration falls or not, will depend on how intensively we are organized. And remember, we are not only seeking to overthrow the current status quo, but to overthrow them, we need to appeal to the broadest sections of the Kenyan masses. Because when they are under threat, they will want to divide us. And how are they dividing us now? Because even the rhetoric that the old people should not be able to comment because this is not their war is a reactionary perspective of the event. Because if we did not have our ancestors fighting to liberate this democratic space, if Dedan Kimathi was not hanged by the settler colonialism, then we will not be able to speak on this platform today. If the martyrs of the fight against dictator Moi's misrule, then we won't be on this platform. If the fight of those who martyred during the fight for the 2010 constitution, so the struggle does not move in a straight line, but also the struggle builds on generations. So the Gen Z are actually only fulfilling their historical task by advancing the struggle that was started for the majority of the Kenyan people since independence. What do we want to achieve? In our correct analysis, we want the Kenyan people to make a decision based on their own consciousness as Kenyan people. That means the fight is to complete our independence, to be able to free ourselves. Because without economic independence, we don't have sovereignty. What IMF and World Bank, together with in fact, President William Samoei Ruto and their class, they are so weak to oppress us. That is why they have to form alliances of repression and oppression with international capital and bring the army here for the United States, bring the army for the British here. And this is what we must continue to advance, that the Kenyan people want to make decision as the Kenyan people. Now, so that is what we are fighting for. On the ownership of the revolution, I like the way it has been carried out. But we must say that victory belongs to the masses. The victory always belongs to the Kenyan masses. And that only the person with the people shall carry the mantle of a true revolution. In fact, William Ruto got to capture the imagination of the youth through lies and platitudes. He managed to capture the seat narrowly, but he cannot sustain his win because his popular cause was actually based on platitudes, and lies to the general public. So for us to be able to sustain this momentum, we must continue to advance and appeal to the broader sections of the Kenyan masses to defeat the status quo. On compromises or hardliners, my comment is that those people who compromise with the criminal regime are actually part of that class. Remember, during independence, narrow nationalists like Jomo Kenyatta compromised with the colonial British to actually continue with the land theft and domination and to actually re-establish the neo-colonial system. So the people who want to negotiate with President William Samoei, the criminal that has shed too much blood in the Kenyan street, they do not have a problem with the current status quo. They are only envious that now President William Samoei Ruto is overseeing their affairs on behalf of the real enemy. But these people who want to compromise, they only see themselves occupying the positions of the white masters that are now the neo-colonial chieftaincies that we have in this country. So we must call those people who want us to compromise at this time and tell them that everything else that the Kenyan people have won, they have won it hard-won with their own blood. So we must never derail them by compromises with this illegitimate regime. Now, on personality, we have to know that even though President William Samoei Ruto is a Kalenjin, but he's the worst Kalenjin. Even though Gachagua is a Kikuyu, but is the worst Kikuyu. In fact, the system that we have in place makes sure that the most powerful positions in these countries are occupied with the most backward people. In fact, President William Samoei Ruto does not represent the interest of the Kalenjin community. The Mudavadi does not represent the interest of the Luya nation. Gachagua does not represent the interest of the Kikuyu nation. In fact, they represent the interest of a minority of those small nationalities that they continue to ride on their back and negotiate for political power. So they must be called out in terms of mobilization, that even when people talk about tribalists, like I'd rightly say, it is not per se that the objective reality people are tribalists, but they are tired of political elite that uses tribalism to divide them along ethnic lines. So they are rejecting that kind of tribalism. On dialogue and the MPs who voted yes, I think what we must hear that the MPs that voted yes are the enemies of the Kenyan people. But the MPs who voted no, they must be seen to represent the interest of the people. So they should be the first people to start filing an impeachment motion against this president, because they know for sure the Kenyan people will support it. But don't they just think they will be complacent by saying that, no, we voted no. That is not enough. They must then do more in terms of what the constitutional framework offers them to make sure that the person who has shed so much blood in the Kenya and is determined to kidnap us and to abduct us is removed from political power. And why we must win this war? Because when the storm, when actually the storm goes down, the amount of repression that the Kenya Kwanza is going to do upon us is going to be almost near death. So we are fighting a fight for survival. We are fighting a fight of life and death. If we leave President William Samoei Ruto to stay in power for an inch, once he re-establishes himself, he will massacre us, he will kill us, he will run around and actually collect the people he thought caused him this pain, and they will be sent down under. This is what we must tell the population, that the repression will not continue, will not stop after the rejection of the finance bill. In fact, he will be able to re-establish himself in power, just like Moi did after 1982. Did he not send people to exile? Did he not form torture chambers? So the reason why William Samoei Ruto must not stay any longer in power is also for preservation of the progressives and the revolutionaries that have been opposing his government all this time. That is why we say on Tuesday, we are asking the President William Samoei Ruto, because he knows them, he must provide the people that are abducted, the people that have been kidnapped, dead or alive. He has to produce them, so that at least from that clean sheet, even if we are charging him, we know we have the evidence of dead bodies on the table. But at the moment, when we don't have our loved ones, then we must continue to push on for that kind of thing. Now, on the attacks of who supported who, this is something that has been used to attack the people who are appealing to unite all the progressive forces. There are people who probably will have supported Ruto at that time. There are people who will have supported other people at that time. But if they genuinely come to the people's camp and then say that we realize we have made certain mistake and they are willing to fight on our side, then we must welcome them with jubilation and actually make sure that they can fight alongside us until the defeat of the primary enemy, because this is important. And then finally, on violence and non-violence. It is important because the state has sponsored a certain narrative that there were criminals in the streets. The truth of the matter that we must continue to say is that the violence that was on the streets as we were on the street was started by the organized violence of the state. When people rises up to do a peaceful march in this country, they are met with police batons. They are met with extreme violence of the police. Remember, on day 1 and day 2, there was a peaceful protest. And then day 3, they started to break the front. They are shooting rubber bullets, shooting live bullets. And the only way to break the barrier of the police until we reached parliament was to confront the police violence. And it took at least limited violence from the people who were on the street to make sure that they were able to break the 3 barriers to reach parliament. So we must understand that there is revolutionary violence and there is reactionary violence. We must not be ashamed to defend the people whose crime were only in the streets to defend this democratic space, but they were being shot at by live bullet. They were being shot at by tear gas canisters, by rubber bullets. They had to move to reach their destination, which was to present a petition in parliament. This is important for us. And when we go to the streets, we call upon the police to define the routes where people will go. We have always called upon the police to sit down with the organizers, but they obviously refuse. In fact, Bungei, that is still serving in the police force, and the IG that has resigned, they will not accept a peaceful protest because they want to use the opportunity to brutalize the people. So we must continue to debunk what violence and what non-violence, because then we cannot behave like in Njeketile Rebellion, where the white man was shooting at us with bullets, and then they were spraying water, like witchcraft on them. This is something that we must continue to debunk. Otherwise, my conclusion with this submission, that comrades, let us open doors to consult widely, to build an outcome in terms of an organization of national that has a national that cuts across all stratas of interest in this country, and prepare for a post-Ruto era by having a government that can respond to the people. Why are we asking President William Ruto to fire people? After he's gone, we can actually fire them all and recruit people who can serve us. Why are we asking the President Ruto, who has continued to defy the constitution, to implement the constitution? When we have a pro-people government, the constitution will be implemented to serve the majority of the people. So the actual thing is we go to the real enemy, finish the real enemy, overhaul the system, and roll out a pro-people government. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Buka. Let's have Tabitha speak, then Neto, and then Anthony, and then we'll open the mic to other speakers. Hilary, I see your mic is on. Go on.
Yeah, I think Tabitha dropped. I don't know. And Neto, can you hear us or you're hanging? Because I'm just wondering what is happening. I think Neto is also
Neto
hanging.
I think Neto is also dropped from technical issues. Neto, would you kindly then just
he should drop and come back.
Yeah.
Drop Neto, then come back. So
I think Maj, let Anthony go because he's representing the Gen Z group.
Okay, Anthony, over to you.
And he has really been on the list.
Hello, am I audible to everyone?
Loud and clear.
Okay. First of all, I'm a millennial, but let me just take this opportunity to thank you for opening this wonderful space where we get to exchange ideas on the Kenya we want and the country we want to have. I've had several people, Miguna, Anthony Gashoka, talk about the Ruto they know, which I believe is something we should all focus on. Anytime you're going to either take part in sport or politics or even war, you first of all must appreciate your opponent. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses and all that? Ruto is not president by accident. He was strategic about it. He planned about it. And I believe he believes he knows what exactly he wants to achieve in this regime that he is leading. Our differences between us who are agitating for change are more of ideological differences. We all agree we want better accountability. We all agree we want a very deliberate fight on corruption. We all agree we need to stop seeing the blatant plunder of our country. We also need to agree that all movements that changed the course of a nation were started by young people. From the Mau Mau to repealing Section 2A to the Katiba movement to what we are doing right now. What I feel we are missing is a structure. Because for us to advance in any way, we need a structure so that we know in which direction are we all going. I just feel we are moving in very many directions at the same time. I also feel that we are not taking advantage of the small wins we get. And I'll go back to something I think someone alluded to, that come this Monday, tomorrow, a group of 150 people will sit down somewhere in this country, I don't know whether it's KICC, and they will start picking the next IEBC. Still, next week, the cabinet will be announced, I think by Thursday or Friday. For us who are agitating, will our choice, our voice, our aspirations be represented on the IEBC we want to see? Will the same things, the ideologies we want, be represented on the cabinet that is going to be selected? Because he did say that he will consult. But I noted clearly, he said political parties, church leaders, civil society. He never mentioned the Gen Z movement anywhere. For us to be able even to feel we are winning, because I believe in any move, any agitation worldwide, study history for as far back as we can go. Anytime you gain ground, you need to learn to live. I'll appreciate, yes, appreciate that we need to leave our foot soldiers, people who represent our ideas and what we want. Right now, we are gaining ground, but we're just moving. We are leaving no one behind to say what we want. My other point is,
Could you try to land in the next 1 minute and just a clarification?
Actually, I am.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on my last point.
Yes, and then Dr. You're gonna be next. Yeah.
I'm on my last point.
Okay, please go.
Next is someone, I think it was Booker, who talked about how we demonstrate and the way we need to demonstrate. Personally, I feel we can have two fronts. We can have the street movement, which, if I was asked, we need to strategize on how do we prevent hired goons from penetrating what we are doing. And this is why most people switched to a strategy of a peaceful way of demonstrating. And I'll give an example. When Takna Shinawatra was being overthrown, all those people did was sit down on tarmac. You choose major roads, the road to Treasury, the road to Parliament, and the road to the airport. Okay? If you sit on those roads, how can a goon penetrate that? If today government comes and starts tear gassing people who are sitting down, then the world will say, hey, that's not right. These people are peaceful. They are asking for you to listen. But so long we continue doing things, and General is here, Miguna, so long we continue doing things the Raila way, we are going to the streets, we will lose because we are fighting we need to fight an intellectual battle. We use brute force where it's needed, and we use intellectual muscle where it's needed.
Yeah.
Those were my only points.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Maj. I really like the ideas that are flowing in. I would like to comment just briefly, but I'll start with what Ruto said today. Ruto said, with his chest out, I'm fully in charge. That's what he was saying. As a strategist and a revolutionary, when you hear someone in power saying, I'm fully in charge, it's actually a declaration of, I'm completely not in charge. So that's what Ruto was saying. I'm completely not in charge. Because for you to say you are in charge, you don't have to say it. People should see that you are in charge. We know for a fact that Ruto is very, very weak and cornered. Now, to dial back to what Barack Muluka said and what Buka said, both of them are correct. Ruto and his regime and his collaborators are the ones that are the immediate target of the revolution. But the revolution will not be complete if we do not overhaul the entire neo-colonial imperialist structures that were put in place to keep the African down. And that is why it is not just a Gen Z revolution. Because when you are reconstructing a country, I saw somebody produce a very beautiful map saying under construction or under renovation, Kenya, the map of Kenya. When you are renovating, when you are reconstructing, when you are overhauling, whatever word you want to choose, of an entire political, economic, cultural, social structure, because that's what we will be doing, it means that it will not take a day, and it means you're not doing it for one generation. It means you're not doing it for yourselves. It means it is classless. It means it is tribeless, because the country is for all of us. And we must do this for the future generations that have not yet been born, that are yet to be born. And for the past heroes that have died for the changes and the transformative results that we are seeking. That's what we are doing it for. The justice we are seeking, as I have always said, is justice as far back as Pio Pinto Gama, as far back as the ones the British killed, many of them, and as far back as the children and innocent civilians that Kenyatta mowed down at the former Russia hospital in Kisumu, as far back as the people Moi killed during the 1982 coup, as far back as those who were tortured in Nyayo House and were thrown from windows, as far back as those who died in exile during Kenyatta, during Moi, during Kibaki. There were people who went to exile during Kibaki. Remember, there were hundreds and thousands who crossed the border from Busia and from many other parts in Western Kenya to go into Uganda. Some of them never came back. A lot of us do not want to remember this. We cannot forget the people that died in 2007, 2008, 2013, 2018, 2017, and as recently as last year, when the police went all over Nyanza, all over Kibera, all over the residences in Nairobi, took people from their homes, killed them in Sondu area. We cannot forget these people. We cannot, for the life of us, only remember Rex. No, we remember all of them. Let's do this for generations past, for generations now, and for generations in the future. Then we will get somewhere. I think it is wrong to say that we get out of the streets. The streets is where the liberation must be obtained. That's our space. Kenya, the entire country, whether it is the streets in the urban centers, whether it is in the villages, wherever it is, we have to encourage Kenyans to come out everywhere and occupy everywhere. So if some people occupy streets, so be it. But we have to occupy the CBD of Nairobi, because that's the area where power resides in the Republic of Kenya. So we cannot encourage people, we cannot discourage people from coming out. We should be encouraging them to come out in large numbers. I will, however, disagree with Booker on impeachment. We do not want impeachment. That's a futile exercise. It will not happen. All members of parliament have been voted, the ones who voted no and the ones who voted yes. We are going to have to replace the entire political class currently occupying institutions of power, because they are all on the same side. I say on the same side because if you listened over their speeches over the weekend, if you listen to ODM and Azimio people speaking from Kakamega, if you listen to them speaking from the KICC with Ruto, they are reorganizing, they are rebranding, they are strategizing on how to take over this revolution, this movement, so that they can come in with people, imposters, youth from all over the country that are going to do their bidding. These youth do not represent the revolutionaries on the street, the ones who have died, the ones who have been abducted, the ones who have been tortured. So we have to be very clear. If we are rejecting and we are overhauling the entire system, we cannot at the same time say that we want them to go to the same rotten National Assembly that passed Finance Bill 2024 to impeach Ruto. That would be witchcraft. They will not be able to impeach Ruto. We want parliament disbanded, and we are going to do it. Just like you said correctly, that why are we asking for Ruto to fire so-and-so? We remove him with the entire regime, which means we fire everybody, plus we fire the opposition that is fortifying them. So I will end by saying, I think the next pressure point is Tuesday, that we should come out in large numbers so that if Ruto is going, and by Ruto I mean the entire regime, is going to die by cardiac arrest, so be it. Let's cause that cardiac arrest to happen as soon as possible. Let's remove these people. Let's then transform this the system of governance. But we cannot do it, of course. The strategy of doing that will not be done on the spaces, because they are here. I've actually seen my friend Murkomen is here and other people from State House. So people are listening to us, and it is good that they are here because I think they need to listen to us. And they need to know that what they're trying to do now is too little too late. We are not interested. That is something they should have done 2 years ago when they were sworn into power. They failed to do that. They showed us that they were not interested. They were not capable. They are not competent. They are, in terms of integrity, they are incurably defective. And so the people have resorted to take back the power that we donated to them and are now exercising that power. And Tuesday should be the final push when they all are